All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Nate here with another Wuthering Waves video. In today's video, we're going to be going over your sub DPS and how to build them out, and how they are actually meant to be played to support your main
牙を
DPS.
研げ
If you guys are interested in this,
戦いに備え
stick
ろ
around. Before we get into that, however, please consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel so that you never miss out on any Wuthering Waves content. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our sub DPS or support units. All right, guys, so now that we are on the character selection screen, let's go ahead and take a look at Mortify. Mortify is going to be a very, very good sub DPS. He's going to help support Gion quite a bit with his heavy attack boost, but how do we build this character out? What kind of stats are we looking for when it comes to Mortify, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the stats that we have here. So for sub DPS, the stats that we're going to be looking for is going to be crit rate, crit damage, attack percent, and energy regen. When we think of sub DPS, we think about supporting the main DPS, right? How is this character going to support the main DPS? Well, our sub DPS is going to help support by doing damage, as well as helping booster that main DPS's either attack stat or skill damage or something that they're doing when they get switched off the field or onto the field is going to boost your main DPS's attack, right? So we want to be looking at characters that do those things that are going to help support our main DPS. All right, guys, so as we move on to 5-star weapons, it's important to know that your 5-star weapons are going to be superior to your 4-star and 3-star weapons. However, I know it's not always viable to go ahead and pull for 5-star weapons, so 4-star weapons should just work just fine. The only issue is going to be that gearing out your sub DPS might be a little bit harder if you don't have any 5-star weapons, and that is because of this substat right here. Usually you want to aim for crit rate or crit damage, and most of the free to play stuff that you're going to get is just going to have attack percent boost or a different attribute boost. But yeah, your 4-star weapons should just work just fine. But yeah, make sure that you're looking at the ability of the weapon. The ability of the weapon is either going to help support your sub DPS in some type of way, or possibly it could help your main DPS in some sort of way. Just make sure that you're paying attention to what this ability does and if it will affect your character, your sub DPS or your main DPS. And that's pretty much it for weapons. Let's go ahead and move on into echoes. So as we move on to echoes, it's important to understand that whatever echo set that you're using, as well as the main stats and substats of those echoes, are really going to impact how the character plays. So for instance, my sub DPS is usually going to be running the Moonlit Cloud set. And why this set is so important is because it's going to give you a 10% energy regen at 10%, but the 5-piece set is what's really going to make this set stand out. So going for the 5-piece set is going to be very beneficial for your sub DPSs. For Moonlit Clouds, the 5-piece set reads, after using an outro skill, increase the attack of the next resonator by 22.5% for 15 seconds. So I know that when this character switches off the field and uses his outro skill, my main DPS, which is going to be usually my next resonator, is going to get a 22.5% attack increase for the next 15 seconds. So this set is super important to be able to boost your main DPS into doing as much damage as they can do. And I just want to remind you guys that your sub DPS is there to do damage, but their main purpose is to get in, do what they need to do a little bit of damage, and then get out. And the reason for this is because the majority of your resources are going to be going into your main DPS and really maximizing your main DPS's attack stats and things like that. So having this set on your sub DPS is really going to boost your main DPS's attack stats. Up next, we want to look at the 4-cost echoes, and what these 4-cost echoes will do for this turtle right here. I'm not going to say the name. We can either call him Bell or we can call him Turtle. I'm going to go ahead and call him Turtle just for the sake of it. So what this echo skill does is when it's activated, it's going to deal glacio damage to all nearby enemies. It's not really super important to be doing glacio damage on a fire character, but this could be pretty decent on a ice character if you are building out an ice character. And it's also based off of the character's defense. The reason why this echo is so important is not because of that first part right there. The second part is what we're really looking for. So it says reduce incoming damage and increase damage dealt. So what this is going to do is when you use this echo, you are going to get an increase to damage reduction, which means If you use this at the last second before you switch into your main DPS, your main DPS is going to get that damage reduction and also get an increase to damage dealt. And the second echo for this set is also super important. You can use either or, it really doesn't matter. I just happen to roll better on one than I did the other. So we're going to go ahead and look at Heron here. It says transforms into the Heron to deal havoc damage. Not super important. Again, a long press will continuously spit flames, dealing continuous havoc damage. Again, not too important. The first part of the Heron's ability isn't too important. What's important is going to be this second part right here. So this second part says, once the attacks hit an enemy, restore the current character's Renaissance energy. And what this is going to do is it's going to increase the energy in which they can get off the field. And then it says, increase the next character's damage dealt. So again, you want to use this right before you switch into your main DPS. That way, your main DPS can get the benefit of the increased next character's damage dealt. So Heron is going to be really important, and it also goes into the Moonlit Cloud set, which is going to be very beneficial for your main DPS. Now, as for the main stats, again, your sub DPS is going to help your main DPS do a little bit of damage. So you do want to be looking for crit rate or crit damage for the main stat of the 4-cost Echo. The substats that you're going to be looking for, again, is going to be crit rate, crit damage, attack percent, and energy regen. I would say energy regen is super important. So make sure that your sub DPS has a ton of energy regen on it. And this Moonlit Cloud set will help with that. For the 3-cost Echoes, you have 2 different choices here. You can go for an energy regen, which I went ahead and went for just because I like getting Mortify on and off the field as soon as possible and getting all those buffs to my main DPS. Or if you want to do more DPS with your sub DPS, you can also go for the elemental specific. So for instance, here I have the Spearback, which is also part of the Moonlit set that I went ahead and got. This has fusion damage bonus on it as the main substat. So if you are looking to do more damage with your sub DPS, you might want to go for the element specific to that character as the damage bonus. If not, I would suggest you going for energy regen on your main stat for your 3-cost Echoes. Now, for your sub DPS's 1-cost Echoes, you are going to be looking for the attack percent, unless they scale off something different. So I know there's a couple characters in the game already that scale off defense, and there's a couple of characters that scale off HP. But for the most part, if your character scales off attack, you do want your 1-cost Echoes to have the main stat of attack percent. And that way, when your sub DPS gets onto the field, you'll be able to dish out quite a bit of damage. Again, the substats for these are all going to be crit rate, crit damage, attack percent, and energy regen. And then, of course, you will have that last stat that is more specific to the character. So maybe Mortify would either want resonance energy, resonance skill damage, or possibly a basic skill damage. It just depends on your playstyle of the character and how you want to use them. So now that we covered the Echoes a little bit, I hope you understand now that the Moonlit Cloud set is probably going to be the best set that you can put on your sub DPS. And that's because of the energy regen and being able to get them on and off the field, as well as the 5-piece set giving your main DPS the attack percent boost when they get switched into. So the next thing we want to look at is their forte or their skills. So their skills are going to be pretty important. However, you do want to invest more into your main DPS. Once your main DPS has all their skills upgraded, then it's time to start investing into your sub DPS, getting their basic attack up, their resonance skill up, their forte circuit, their resonance liberation, and also their intro skill. Their intro skill might be super important to getting leveled up first, and that's because usually you are going to switch right into them and get that intro skill popped and going. But make sure that you are investing into your sub DPS's skills after you've already invested into your main DPS's skills. And then the last thing I want to talk about is as you play the game and you summon more and things like that, you will start getting duplicates for your sub DPS's. The resonance chain is going to be super important into maximizing the DPS, as well as some of the passives that your sub DPS is going to give your main DPS. So make sure that when you get duplicates of your sub DPS, you do want to invest them right away, and make sure that you understand what they do and how they work. And that way you're more informed on how your sub DPS is actually supposed to work and how it will support your main DPS. And that'll pretty much do it for this one, guys. By now, you should have a good understanding of how your sub DPS is supposed to be built. Again, you do want to be looking into how their skills work and how they are going to increase your main DPS. That is basically what your sub DPS is there for. If you like the content, please consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. If you have any questions or concerns about your sub DPS, go ahead and leave them in the comment section below. But other than that, we will catch you in the next one.